What's up, nature lovers? I'm Justin.
And I'm Anna.
And today we're going to learn some really cool facts about rivers. Have you ever wondered how rivers are formed? What happens to them during big storm events? And what about the way that we as people choose to develop around the river? Are there good ways? Are there bad ways? Today we're going to learn about all those questions and more using our interactive stream table. So, without further ado, let's get started. Let's get to know our stream table a little bit better. First, we start by pouring in a bunch of sediment. This acts as the sand, rocks, and soil of our rivers and streams. Then, we fill our reservoir with 25 gallons of water. At the bottom of our reservoir, we have a pump that will shuttle the water to the top, controlled by this device. Water comes out here and flows across the table before going back down the drain. Once everything is set up, we need to add some more interesting landscape features. Let's add some mountains. Now we're ready to get the water flowing. We'll start our first simulation with a nice low flow. Imagine it's rained a couple days earlier, but today is a beautiful sunny day on our table. As you can see, the stream has already started to flow on the course of least resistance through our mountains. As it flows over the landscape, we can see it picking up little bits of sediment. This is called erosion. Here we can see it happening to a small groundwater stream. Groundwater is water that saturates into the soil under our feet. On our table, you can find it just about anywhere, even under mountains. At this point, our river is still forming. And as we can see here, sediment begins to pile up before busting through to create a new river channel. As the water continues to flow, we can really start to see the shape of our river taking form. You may notice a lot of curves forming on a river as it snakes through the landscape. These are called meanders, and they form from the spinning corkscrew motion of water, causing it to bounce back and forth from side to side. Now that our river is looking nice and established, let's put a small community on it. Quick disclaimer about all of our simulations today. While we can learn some really great real-world concepts with our table, it's not a perfect representation of the real world. So make sure to keep this in mind as we move forward. We'll start off by adding a factory, some houses, a farm, with some rather large cows and pigs, a school, Empire State Building for good measure, and another small suburb. Now that we've got a small community on our table, let's see how they do with some small storm level flows. Already, we can see lots of erosion happening as it carries loads of sediment down the river. With so many buildings along the banks, our community might be in for some tough times. Our farm animals in particular are not doing so hot. We can see the river is washing away the underside of the bank and creating little landslides of sediment into the water. And down goes the pig. He's now one with the river, RIP. Factories like this one can be a real threat to the health of our river. By being so close, they risk polluting the water with their chemical byproducts. Our table is now simulating a major storm event. And as we can see, the increased flow of water is leading to a lot of destruction and landslides on our table. With the storm cleared, we can see just how much destruction water can cause. Above our reservoir, we collect all the sediment that was washed downstream during this simulation. In the real world, all of this sediment can create a major problem for communities downstream, making their waters cloudy and unhealthy. Now that our first simulation is over, let's reset the table and try again, adding some new elements to our community. For this next simulation, we're going to put one big mountain right in the middle of our table and see how that impacts the flow of our river. We're going to skip ahead to where our new river is already established. Which path do you think it will take? With our new river formed, let's go over to Anna to learn about the next thing we'll add to our table, riparian buffers.
On our stream table, to represent a riparian area, we use sponges and small plastic trees. The sponges help represent roots, which will absorb water as the water is flowing by our stream banks and helps to stabilize the soil. And then the small plastic trees represent all of the vegetation that you might see working together and the roots growing together like nuts to help hold the soil in place even more.
Riparian areas, or buffers, are incredibly important for stream health. We've gone ahead and added lots of riparian areas to the banks of our river, which should help keep the sediment in place. We've also added a small stream crossing, made up of tubes or culverts, as they're called. Now that our table has lots of vegetation, let's simulate another storm event. Right off the bat, we can see our riparian areas holding the banks together very successfully. Our banks without riparian buffers, unfortunately, are not doing so well. Even as we increase our flow to simulate a major storm event, we can still see our riparian areas doing a great job at holding the banks together. In the real world, riparian buffers are not only a great way to control erosion, but they also provide vital habitat for many different species of birds, bugs, and mammals. At the top of our table, we can see a great example of waterways with riparian buffers and those without. Some plants are inevitably going to end up in the water. This is perfectly normal. It can actually serve as a great source of nutrients for creatures that live in the river. Let's check in on our culvert. We can see that one edge is already starting to collapse a little bit. This is probably no longer a drivable stream crossing. If we look upstream from the culverts, we can see that water is pooling before it can enter the tubes, which can cause more erosion and damage to local property. With our second storm simulation over, we can still see that there's some destruction around our river. However, you might also notice that not a single building has managed to collapse into our waterway. As for our culvert, while it might not have fully collapsed, it's not in the best shape. So let's explore an alternative. Bridges may be more expensive than culverts, but the impact they have on the quality of our streams and rivers is very clear. By keeping the riverbed natural, we allow the water to flow much easier, even during major storm events. Let's check out just how much sediment washed downstream during our second simulation. From the looks of things, we got about half of the sediment that we did in our first simulation.
And there you have it, 2 different ways that we can choose to develop around our rivers. We hope you learned something new today. We'll leave a list of all of the terms we described down in the link below. Remember to get outside whenever you can and stay curious.